Another bright Monday morning here at Morning Cafe, 3rd of November 2025, the very first Monday of November. 58 days left in 2025. If you're counting down to Christmas, it is only 52 days left. Karibu tufike ile ni 50 days to Christmas. Ikifika hapo kwisha, sherehe, it heads south. It's also a very special day for so many different people. For those doing the KGSA assessment, today is the very last day. They'll have the social studies paper this morning starting at 8, and then later on at 11, they sit for the religious papers, and after that, wamemaliza JSS. Wanangojea kwenda form 1.
Amazing. And KCSE pia leo wanafanya written papers, English paper 1 and chemistry paper 1 today. We can also count it this way. We have like 8 Mondays
left
to Christmas.
To Christmas. Inafikanga mahali hata you no longer count the Mondays. If you can do 2 weeks to Christmas, tushafunga mwaka. Anyway, a lot of discussion still around Tanzania. Let's take a look at the headlines today, and they're calling it the Tanzania massacre. That's the standard. A very disturbing front page here, full of grisly scenes from Tanzania.
The Star, TZ unrest cuts food supplies to Kenya and disrupts trade.
Yes. How is it affecting Kenya directly? Matters party politics and ODM also dominating the headlines on Taifa Leo. Sharti kali la ODM kwa Ruto, gazeti la Taifa Leo.
Daily Nation, Oburu, it's DP or nothing.
Kina chacha. Matters politics also getting prominence on the front page of the People Daily. Raila succession showdown.
Finally, Business Daily, Spring Valley, Upper Hill, top city suburbs, land price gains.
All right. For this Monday discussion, we'll be having Kipruto Rapkirwa, who served as Agriculture Cabinet Minister in the Kibaki One administration. He will be in studio alongside Kathy Irungu, a governance analyst, and Wakili Kibe Mungai. Do stand by for that conversation, starting at 6:30 this morning.
Later on, we'll be having Monday Blitz. Katela Macy, Fred Arocho, and Duncan Mutua will be here alongside Japheth Ahula. This is Partnership and Sponsorship Manager at Sport Pesa. Coming your way starting 8 a.m.
Okay. We cross the border and go regional, and of course the big story is about Tanzania. We still do not have any papers directly from Tanzania. The internet is still shut. No news coming from there directly, but very many different other news sources have the news. One of them is East African. Talk about Samia's options. Tanzania's president may have won the popular vote. 98%. 98%. Anyway. She may have won the popular vote, but she has now to embark on healing the nation after daily riots. This could mean engaging with her opponents, or she might just dig in and nip the ongoing rebellion in the bud. Well, that's according to the East African. It is the biggest discussion. The other stories featured here. Sudan terror goes on as the world watches. A lot is happening in Sudan that I think because of what is happening in Tanzania, this may escape our attention. I remember you mentioning it last week that we need to focus on Sudan a bit. Probably we should. I agree. We need to. The fall of El Fasher to RSF lifts the lead to the ongoing horror in Darfur. And that very disturbing video of a mother and her 3 children begging for their dear lives, and very disturbing. Elsewhere, DRC crisis, will France succeed? That's the other story on the front page of the East African. Let's go to Uganda.
We start off with the Daily Monitor. Flood of despair. This is wrath of Mother Nature, they say. Now, weeks of torrential rain and floods have seen Ugandans pay a heavy price, with the death toll from 4 instances of landslides in Sebei sub-region rising, and Kampala city business people counting losses. Now, this story has been covered on 4 pages, 5 including the front page. 14 people still missing since the Thursday and Friday night landslides. We also have a similar story here in Kenya, but let's focus kwanza in Uganda. Now, 18 deaths have been reported from the landslides in Kapchorwa, Kwen, and Buko districts by the time this newspaper was being published.
And areas around Kapchorwa, I think, are neighboring Kenya, because we also have Kapchorwa on this side of the border. So areas around Mount Elgon and those counties around the borderline between Uganda and Tanzania, they're suffering the same fate as the Kenyan counterparts.
They say Kampala mess, and the number of hours police have spent in downtown Kampala is 72 hours attempting to drain flood water from shops. Other quick headlines here. The Museveni monitor on the top strip, bargain with the devil, end of a long dance is a question. And veteran journalist and former editor of this newspaper, Charles Onyango Bo reflects on the government monitor love-hate relationships spanning 3 decades. Mobile money loans now surge to 3.5 trillion Ugandan shillings. Okay. Over 100 children given wrong deworming drug.
Would you imagine that?
Aye.
Dawa ya minyoo alafu unapewa ile ifai. Maybe unapewa ya ng'ombe.
Mtoto. Ati maybe unapewa ya ng'ombe. Tanzania, okay. You want to say that?
No, niliona jamaa fulani wa gym alisema because it's so big he uses deworming drugs za ng'ombe, sio za binadamu.
Ndio kwa mkubwa.
Sijui kwa nini.
All right, they make mention of Tanzania as well, and they say Tanzania's opposition rejects Samia Suluhu landslide election win. Yeah. But here in Tanzania, even if you oppose that results, there's nothing that can be done. They don't have that democratic freedom like Kenya. You cannot go to court.
So there's no court that has jurisdiction to determine results of an election.
So even if they reject
but then
it,
again,
then what
the
does
issue
it do?
is, have you ever seen anywhere where any person has won 98% of the vote? Out of the 272 seats in parliament, they say CCM has won 270. That means that that parliament only has 2 members who are not of the ruling party. Hapa Kenya tuna complain at your tyranny of numbers. Huko, by the way, it's the entire parliament. That's a one-party state. Yeah.
All right, that's the Daily Monitor.
Yes, matters campaigning. Also there on the front page kuna picha moja hapo ya unajua ile drama ya campaigns ya kawaida, being installed as an elder, being given the shield, the spear, kofia nini inaendelea. Museveni campaigning in Teso sub-region kama kawaida, amefanywa elder tena, I think for the 100th time. Yeah. But the big story there, more oil found in the Albertine. 178 wells drilled at Tilenga and Kingfisher. Hii mambo ya oil ya Uganda inakuanga imeleta tumbo joto sana in the region, especially even in Kenya. I think the debate was, how will they evacuate the oil to the Indian Ocean for exports? Will they use Kenya? Will they use Tanzania? Sahii hata wakijaribu kwenda Tanzania ni kama kule kulifungwa. Those are the stories there on the front page. Elgon matters landslides, 24 feared dead, and this story we were saying it's on both sides of the border, Kenya and Uganda. All right, so those are the main stories in Uganda this morning, and we've taken a look at the regional paper. And once again, it's unfortunate that we still do not have any papers from Tanzania because the internet remains shut down. Let's come back and take a look at the weather situation across Kenya. As we continue with this conversation, and we start off in Mandera, and remember that campaigns for the November 27th by-election have kicked off in earnest. So we'll try and take a look at the different areas where we do know that there are campaigns. We start off in Mandera, where Banisa constituency is one of the constituencies which will have a by-election. And it's a very hot day in Mandera today. Highs of 37 degrees. Huku hata wafichi, I know they usually say partly cloudy, but today wamesema mostly sunny. Huko kama una campaign tafadhali. Kama unaweza tuma tu SMS jaribu, because no chance of precipitation at all. A very dry, sunny day in Mandera today, areas around Banisa, and this will persist for the rest of the week. Highs of 36 and 37 degrees. Let's go to Kasipul, which is in Homa Bay.
15 degrees in Kasipul this morning, feels like it. It's a mostly cloudy day here, rain likely to be experienced starting 1 p.m. It's highs of 23 degrees and precipitation in Kasipul today, 2.9 millimeters, not so bad. All right.
The other area, of course, where there'll be a lot of focus is in Malava, which is in Western Kenya, areas around Vihiga and Kakamega around there. Currently 17 degrees, yes, a very high chance of rainfall, especially in the afternoon, starting at midday. It is a very cloudy day, 5.7 millimeters of rainfall, which is the highest we've seen so far. And yes, highs of 26 degrees, a bit warm there, but campaign pale zitaendelea, that is in Malava. Let's go to the coast, areas around Kilifi.
It's 24 degrees in Magarini, to be specific, feels like 27. Clear skies with periodic clouds. Today it's a very sunny day here. Highs of 30 degrees and precipitation in Magarini today, nothing to show. Very hot day, highs of 30 degrees, and this is for today and tomorrow. They're saying it promises to drop just by 1 degree.
Focus on Elgeyo Marakwet, which is the area affected by the landslides. We've just been talking about what's happening on the other side, on the Ugandan side of the border. But yes, it's also affected quite a huge chunk of the areas around Mount Elgon, Elgeyo Marakwet there. highs of 36 degrees, meaning it's also a very hot day. Currently, it's 28 degrees in Elgeyo Marakwet. It is a cloudy day, a bit of precipitation expected, especially around midday and getting into the afternoon. 1.0 millimeters of rainfall. This kind of warmth will persist for the rest of the week. Highs of 36 degrees in Elgeyo Marakwet.
Finally, in Nairobi this morning it's 17 degrees. It's hot. It's a mostly cloudy day. It's likely to rain starting 6 a.m. Wanasema hivyo sahi ni kama kunanyesha. So highs of 24 degrees and precipitation in Nairobi today 1.6 millimeters. It will go high starting tomorrow with 26 degrees. Okay.
So not a very rainy day apart from what we've seen in Western Kenya, areas around Kakamega and Vihiga. They do expect higher rainfall than most other parts of the country. But remember, the campaigns for the by-elections continue in 23 different areas of the country. Let's take a look at the Monday traffic here in Nairobi. Tuone ni kama watu wanarudi. Remember, KCSE exams, ile sasa proper KCSE exams, ile yenye wanaita ndio hii exam inaanza leo. Yes, but the good thing is that most schools closed last week, and even the KJSEA learners are finishing their assessment today. So most roads in Nairobi are looking green this morning. Even the usual dots and stretches of yellow, you can't see any, especially kwa Outer Ring Road. It's green on both sides of the road, heading towards, from further towards Donholm and beyond. Jogoo Road, a bit of a yellow stretch at Makadara, but after that it's smooth all the way mpaka Ufike City Stadium, roundabout, a bit of the same around Machakos bus station, Haile Selassie Avenue kama kawaida, areas around Marikiti and Railways bus station getting busy. Thika Road, kama kawaida pale Pangani interchange, it's building up nicely, so guys coming from Kiambu Road and Thika Road, nothing out of the ordinary. It's green all the way up until you get to the Pangani interchange. Mombasa Road from the airport, if you've just landed, it's green all the way into town. Ile barabara ya first floor na ya ground floor zote ziko green. On the western side of the city, the southern bypass, Langata Road, Ngong Road, as well as Wayakiwe into the CBD, it's looking green all the way, meaning it's comfortable traffic today across the city. I do not know if there's any incident. If at all there is, and we've not been able to point it out, kindly help us do that through our social media pages, and we'll be telling you that in a short while. Let's take a look at the quote of the day.
It does not matter how slowly you go, as long as you don't stop.
Let's now come back and take a look at the local dailies. Tanzania massacre is a big headline on the front page of the Standard. They call it unbridled power. If Mwalimu Julius Nyerere were to return to the nation he built on the ideals of African unity, he would be horrified. As Tanzania's first female president fought to secure her own mandate, blood flowed across the land. Cut off from the world during and after polling, Tanzanians endured what rights groups now describe as a bloodbath that was hidden behind an official blackout but laid bare through reports shared with their Kenyan counterparts. This is what has been given prominence on 4 pages of the Standard today, pages 4, 5, 6, and 7. And many people are wondering if at all they're very genuine and the government in Tanzania was only trying to contain, to ensure that the elections do happen and happen without much problem. Why is the internet still off? Yes? Why is the internet still down in Tanzania 5-6 days after election day, after the winner has been announced? Why is the internet still down? Ni nini munaficha? Yes. So what the Standard has done, and this is very rare for any paper I've seen in this region, very disturbing photos. Some of them, I think, are of dead bodies on the front page. This is unprecedented. I do not think I've seen this kind of graphic images on the front page of dailies, even here in Kenya, in a very long time, if at all. Not in recent history. So let's take a look at the different angles. Tanzanian polls, AU commission accused of uploading carnage, and the AU chairman, huyu mwenye alichukua kazi mapema hii mwaka, He was very fast. He was among the very first people to congratulate Salmia Suluhu Hassan. Watu wamesema wewe shuali.
Ni wao.
How fast can you be in congratulating? Salila amepata 98%. Out of 272 unasema 270 MPs ni one party. Na unakimbia kucongratulate. Mtu temper your excitement. Unatulia kidogo. Karua Kibwana dismissed Suluhu election as a sham. The Kenyan politicians who voiced their concern about what's happening in Tanzania. An opinion here by Biketi Kikechi and Sema Tanzania hit by more protest deaths and riots. Jewel of Swahili poetry tested as Suluhu's leadership exposes ungwana hypocrisy. And you know life has changed now in Tanzania completely. Ile Maringo alikuwa anasema Tanzania sisi, ujamaa sisi, hizo tabia zenyu mbaya mbaya za Kenya nini.
Viumbe vya ajabu.
Sasa they will not be able to tell us this again. Everything has changed in Tanzania. All right. The other story, yes, about the mudslides and landslides. And probably, if at all it wasn't for the elections in Tanzania, this is what should have been on the front pages here. Mudslides rekindled memories of tragedies that have rocked Elgeyo. And an aerial view of the mudslides that rocked Chesongoch area in Marakwet East, Elgeyo Marakwet County on Saturday. Yes. So far, 200 families have been displaced and 26 people have been reported dead. But they say that no candidate will miss the exam in Elgeyo Marakwet. This is according to the CS of Education, Ogamba, CS Julius Ogamba. Let's hope that it will happen. All right. Other big stories, of course, what's happening in ODM. Na hiyo wataendelea kuzungumzia. On the back page of this paper, no one does it better than Kenyan athletes. And these are Kenyan Helen Obiri, Sharon Lokedi, and Sheila Chepkirui, celebrating after taking the top 3 spots in the New York Marathon yesterday. Congratulations to Helen Obiri, Sharon Lokedi, and Sheila Chepkirui. A podium finish for Kenya there. And it also happened in the men's elite result. Benson Kipruto, Alexander Mutiso, and Albert Korir. Hao ndio walichukua number 1, 2, 3. Nani kama wa Kenya. No one does it better than Kenyan athletes. Indeed, congratulations to our athletes. And that's the standard this Monday morning.
All right, let's take a look at the Star. Tanzania unrest cuts food supplies to Kenya and disrupts trade, and fruits and vegetable stocks run out over insecurity. Border imefungwa, now there's no trade that can go on here. They say anxiety as Tanzania unrest cuts food supplies to Kenya and disrupts trade as well. And the closure of Dar es Salaam port and border post will definitely impact the region's supply chains with delayed deliveries and vessels. They make mention of a price hike here. They say Kenyan traders import tomatoes from Tanzania to capitalize on low prices linked to cheaper farm inputs and absence of VAT on seeds. Now that will not be possible because of what is happening in Tanzania.
What many Kenyans never realize is that, especially when it comes to food, we really depend on our neighbors, Tanzania and Uganda to a very huge extent. Tanzania especially, a lot of the onions that we eat here come from across the border. A lot of the foods, as I said, it's much cheaper in Tanzania. So sisi tumezoea tuna export maua, tuna export kahawa, tuna export chai, lakini chakula huwa tu export sana. In fact, we are not importers of food. This is very sad. But you can imagine now the border points Namanga, I almost said Malaba. Namanga, pale kuna shida. So tutasikia njaa.
President on extensive development tour of Western region. He's been there last week for the better part of it. Yesterday he was in Vihiga County, and here they say President William Ruto and Archbishop Reverend John Shabuga cutting a cake during service at African Divine Church in Gamalenga, Vihiga County. ODM plays a hardball, complicates President Ruto's 2027 game plan. I think they make mention of, was it that exclusive interview?
Yeah, now that was a separate, and we'll come to that.
That's a different one.
Yes, now when the ODM officials were going to Magarini to campaign, now they've insisted, Sisi, as we go to Magarini, we are going as ODM. Hakuna candidate were broad-based. And the SG for ODM alikuwa anasema, okay, fine. Hata ukiambia watu candidate were broad-based. What color is a broad-based party? What symbol do they use? There's nothing that exists. Alisema kuna wale voters anakuja tu hivi kwa polling station anasema mimi nataka chungwa, ama mimi nataka ile ama mimi nataka wheelbarrow. So what is the party symbol for broad base? So akasema hapana, sisi tunaenda kama chungwa. Hii imeleta tumbo joto. Watu wamekasirika. Wale wanavanga t-shirt za yellow wamekasirika sana.
All right, surgeons remove infected lung in milestone procedure. Amazing. Another story is an interview. A man behind over 83 billion shillings private capital drive for SMEs in Kenya. That's the Star. Grab a copy today at 60 Kenyan shillings, fresh, independent and different. Tanzanians now wataweza kupata kweli. In Tanzania it's 1,000 shillings.
Now we can't even cross the border. Aha, hiyo mambo unasema ya ODM na hiyo exclusive interview is what features here on the front page of Taifa Leo. Wanasema sharti kali la ODM kwa Ruto. Kaimu kiongozi wa ODM Daktari Oburu Odinga amesema kuwa chama hicho hakitakubali wadhifa wowote chini ya naibu wa rais kwenye uchaguzi wa 2027. So Kindiki mali huko saa hii anajua kama wanasema broad based ndio inaenda, kazi yake imeishia hapo. He should start counting down how many months? 20.
To election.
20 months to election. 20 or even 19. Wanasema kwenye mahojiano na Taifa Leo, Daktari Oginga amesema kuwa ODM itajiandaa vyema kwa uchaguzi wa 2027 na haitakubali kuwa kwenye upinzani kwa vyovyote vile. Habari kamili kwenye ukurasa wa pili. And if at all they peg their support to the William Ruto administration on them getting the DP slot, then the president really has to redo his mathematics. Because what else would he promise? Because they were hoping to woo, let's say, areas like Ukambani through Kalonzo Musyoka. Then what would they offer Kalonzo Musyoka? What would they offer any candidate from the Western Kenya region if at all the DP slot is taken away automatically by ODM party? All right, very interesting. Although they could pick a Western Kenya candidate as DP, but from ODM. Yeah, interesting. Nasema ODM yaweka wazi nia ya kuwa ndani ya serikali na kutokubali kiti kilicho chini ya naibu rais. Vidokezo zaidi kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa gazeti hili wanasema serikali yasema haina pesa kulipa wahadhiri as lecturers who have remained on strike. Wanavyo kuzidi kuumia baada ya serikali kutangaza rasmi haiwezi kulipa wahadhiri bilioni 7.9 mara moja. Kwingineko, Kalonzo na Gachagua wajigamba kuwa na kura milioni 12. Vinara hao wa Wiper na DCP wadai wanaweza kupata kura 12 milioni kutoka kwa ngome zao. Na walioaga katika maporomoko ya timu 26, tumekuwa tukizungumzia hayo kule Elgeyo Marakwet. Pale juu mipango yawekwa kukabili ajali baharini. Ni idara ya polisi wa ulinzi majini waweka mikakati ya kuzima mikasa ya vifo vya maeneo ya pwani. Kwenye spoti, Liverpool yafufuka, Arsenal nayo yazidi kupaa. The Reds walaza Villa baada ya kupoteza mechi 4 na Arsenal wanyoa Burnley. Nasema clean sheets. Saa hii bao ni 3 tu tangu season ianze. Nani kama Arsenal?
Taifa Leo. All right, let's take a look at the Daily Nation. Oburu, it's DP or nothing. This is an exclusive interview. Bombshell, ODM interim leader Oburu Oginga has drawn a bold red line in Kenya's post-Raila Odinga politics, declaring that the party will not settle for anything less than the deputy president's seat in 2027. For both President William Ruto and the united opposition, this proposition comes with some tough and consequential political arithmetic. Now, that question about Kalonzo Musyoka, he said that Kalonzo brings a strong bloc to the table, but they cannot support him if he's not in their formation, that is, in a formation with the ODM party. He made mention of some members of the, what is it called, united opposition. This is one by Martha Karua. He said Martha is tough, rigid, but she can be dictatorial if given a chance.
She can be.
Anaweza fanya mambo ya
watu wanaogopa mama, wanaogopa kina mama sasa, lakini tujasema anaweza kuwa kama
huyu ni Oginga. Evidence kakalatasi is here.
There's a very interesting story he gave, and there it's there on that page. Is it page 9?
Page 5.
Yeah, page 5.
About what?
About the last call he had with his brother,
Okay.
the late Prime Minister Raila Odinga. because there's a lot of discussion about what happened the last few days before Raila Odinga passed on. And I've seen them questioning, especially online, that these people seem to be giving conflicting details about what happened. And whatever he said yesterday, and it's captured there on that story, may actually conflict with other stories given by other people who claim that they were there or talked to the former Prime Minister. So who's telling the truth?
Guru amesema yeye hakuwa hapo. They just talked on phone.
Yes.
Devastation as landslide death toll climbs to 26, and the number of people who are reported are still missing is 25. Tanzanian elections, Chadema rejects poll results as Ruto's silence on vote questioned. Now they say Chadema terms the results announced by Tanzania's Independent National Electoral Commission completely fabricated, as Kenyan opposition politicians question the silence of President William Ruto, who is the chairman of the East African Community.
At least he's not been quick to jump and congratulate her. You know, that's what happens when you're, especially your neighbor, and I win elections. The first thing ni kusema, we as Kenya congratulate you. At least President Ruto has not been quick to congratulate Samia Suluhu Hassan. But the AU chairperson amekimbia.
Well, the EAC chairman is still quiet. Very nice. Obiri Kipruto lead clean sweep of titles in New York. Kipchoge wins up 17th in men's competition. In a show of dominance, Kenyan men and women win all medals on offer in final major marathon race. Millionaires, these ones. That's the Daily Nation.
People Daily matters Raila succession, a showdown, Ruto, ODM and the shadow of ethnic politics. That's a story on page 4. They say the senior party figures who once operated in Raila's shadow are now stepping forward, each weighing their strength and appeal. And for decades, Raila was more than an opposition leader. He was a symbol of defiance and hope, a rallying force for millions who believed in a different Kenya. His absence has created uncertainty. And with the clock ticking towards the 2027 general election, politicians have little time to mourn, especially now with the by-elections. Because hapo nafikiri ndio watu wanadraw ile, wamethrow ile gauntlet, wanasema sasa vuka hapa, vuka hii laini uone, kama sitakuchapa. Pale chini Uhuru's power play resets Mount Kenya dynamics as Gachagua battles for survival is another story there. But interesting ile picha wametumia ile yenye rais anauza wao unapiga kelele kwa nini? Kwa nini unapiga kelele? Hapana. Alafu a very defiant SG of ODM asema mimi ndio Sifuna ule wa ODM. Na nimesema chama hichi amutatutisha. People Daily.
Finally, Business Daily. Spring Valley, Upper Hill, top city suburbs, land price gains. And land prices in Spring Valley and Upper Hill grew at the fastest pace last year compared to other high-end Nairobi estates amid a shift in investor appetite towards residential and mixed-use property. Latest survey report by real estate firm that has consoled for the third quarter of the year shows that the price of an acre of land in Spring Valley shot up 13.3% over the last 12 months to an average of 305.9 million shillings. I think ni juzi kwa karibu na town sana.
An acre.
Kenya remains undecided on new IMF deal. Champions are also here on the front page of the Business Daily. Kenyans rule New York City. This is Helen Obiri, Sheila Chipkurui and Sharon Lokedi. On the ticker, banks defy digital trend with sustained branch expansion. Old Mutual deal-ups, health insurance stakes, and 17 counties fail to attract big investments. That's the Business Daily.
Big headlines this morning. We'll be looking at them with this panel. Kipruto Rapkirwa, who served as Minister for Agriculture in the Kibaki-1 administration. Kathy Rungu, governance analyst, and Wakili Kibe Mungai. They will be in studio in a few minutes' time to help us take a look at the big headlines. Of course, the big discussions, what's happening in Tanzania, and locally, politics with the ODM appearing to change tune, or are they doing that? Being a Monday Blitz coming up at 8 a.m.
Katela Macy, Fred Arocho, and Dan Kamuto will be hosting Jaffa Vakula, Partnership and Sponsorship Manager at SportPesa, coming your way at 8 a.m.
All right. Let's take a look at the caricatures this morning. Tuone wachoraji kwenye magazeti wanazungumzia nini. And we start off with the one on the Standard. Harry is back. I think ule mwingine ameenda leave. And they have a caricature of this landslide winner in Tanzania. ameketi in a room which is flooded by blood, na kuna watu ni kama wamekufa pale, lakini ameketi tu ametulia.
Sitting pretty.
Sitting pretty there. Anaitwa Mama. I tell you. That's the cartoon on the Standard. Then we take a look at the cartoon on the Star, focusing on local politics.
Your story of broad-based government, the red line that you're talking about. Oburu Oginga wants to run away with the chungwa in Broad.
Mchana. Amesema kama si deputy president position, don't even, don't bother with us.
Sifuna namwambia ulikuwa unasemaje?
Lakini kama kuna sauti wa inaudhi opponents wa ODM ni ya Sifuna. Because he sounds, sijui nita describe hiyo sauti yake aje. Akiongea hivi kuna watu wanaudhika, wanasikia uchungu sana.
The Star.
Raila succession, same thing on the cartoon on the People Daily. Kwa ile kofia, watu wako pale chini, kila mtu anajaribu kuhide under the shadow of the former prime minister. But for how long? For how long? By elections coming up very fast, only 25 days left. Mbivu na mbichi tajulikana.
All right, big boot here, RSF, that is the Rapid Support Forces fighting the SAF. Imewapiga sana, and the citizens of Sudan are paying for it.
Yeah, at least now the Daily Nation, someone has captured what's happening in Sudan, because I think we keep forgetting that whatever is happening there is not so good. And we've been mentioned here and there about our possible involvement or otherwise in whatever is happening there.
Yeah.
Tuko na aibu hapa. Yeah.
All right.
On the Daily Nation.
Those are the caricatures this morning, and of course, news making headlines in the country and regionally. Do interact with us on our socials, TV47 Kenya on Facebook and on YouTube. We can already see your feedback here. Morris Werangai anasema wa Mushanja Cabras, good morning. Good morning to you. Charles Osoro from Imara Daima pamoja. Lameki Bakari watching live from Kari, Nairobi. Benjamin is following. Nancy Awar anasema, Nancy from Kisumu, good morning.
Lois Molly says good morning. Nancy Awar. Didan Mukungi, good morning. And Apareng Apax Elijah, good morning, watching Morning Cafe from West Pokot. Thank you so much for watching, and keep it here. We'll continue sampling some of your views as we continue with the show. And yes, interact with us through our social media pages, TV47 Digital on X. My handle on X is at Freddy Ndimuli. Use the hashtag Morning Cafe TV47.
All right, see you after the break.
No more excuses. It's time to rise, grind, and own your mornings. Join Coach Shadrach Oma every Monday to Friday from 5:30 to 6 a.m. only on TV47. Full body workouts, zero equipment, maximum results. Start strong, stay strong. TV47 Fitness with Coach Shadrach only on TV47. Looking for the perfect way to kick off your weekend?
Pole. Hiyo ni salamu ya Mluya kabisa.
Tune in to Friday with Betty, the most exciting show on TV.
Betty, one tiaga. Betty, I don't know where this guy's going.
Walikutoka.
From the latest news and trends to unforgettable moments.
Mimi simpa. Hiyo naona nakubali.
Wewe ni simpa.
Friday with Betty is your go-to show for a fabulous Friday night.
Theological, meteorologist. What is that word, Willis?
Tune in this and every Friday at 9 p.m. and let's make your Fridays unforgettable. Only on TV47. Enjoy uninterrupted live streaming of your favorite programs on TV 47 and Radio 47 on the go with our new mobile-friendly website. Experience the future of broadcasting. Visit www.tv47.digital or scan this QR code and stream your way to endless news and entertainment. Welcome to the home of untold stories.
This is Kenya's #1 talk show, Dr. Forget tonight. My name is the Eagle himself. Dr. Forget is my name.
We are flipping the script, but guess what? Or should I say, guess who is taking over tonight's show?
Ani wewe furahia umekaa na kasipuni. CP unit ni Punet.
Ni Punet.
Punet.
So you guys knew about...
Piga.
Sawa basi. I say, man, that don't give you the whole time.
I don't want to go back to brokenness.
President Samia Suluhu was declared the winner with a staggering 97.66% of the vote, securing a first full term in office since first assuming office in 2021 following the death of her predecessor John Pombe Magufuli. However, the announcement has sparked widespread protest, with demonstrators decrying the exclusion of major opposition parties from the race. The main opposition party, Chadema, barred from participating in the election, has dismissed Suluhu's victory and stated that it does not recognize Samia Suluhu Hassan as the president of the United Republic of Tanzania, highlighting she has not been elected by the people of Tanzania. The party has further urged the international community not to recognize Samia Suluhu as the leader of Tanzania, as she lacks legitimacy. Despite the domestic turmoil, international reactions have been swift, with some supportive. The African Union, through its chairperson Mahmoud Ali Youssef, has congratulated Samia Suluhu for her victory, while also noting the loss of human life during the post-electoral protests. The European Union, in a statement, has noted with concern the events that occurred throughout the election day and that are still ongoing, including violence, internet shutdown, and reports of election irregularities. The EU has now called on for the release of all detained politicians and for a fair trial of those arrested on a sound legal basis. As the nation braces for further demonstrations, the world watches closely as Tanzania, a country of over 68 million people, stands at a crossroads between stability and the growing demand for democratic reform.
A landslide election victory is what it's being described as. 97.6% of all votes cast that election in Tanzania. About 31 million votes. Numbers that we've never seen in Kenya, despite the fact that we take weeks to count our votes, about 14 million. 31 million votes were counted in Tanzania in a matter of days, 2 days, and 98% went to the winning candidate. Out of the 272 available seats in parliament, 270 go to CCM. And the AUC chairperson was the very first to send his congratulatory message to President-elect Samia Suluhu Hassan. But it's the fashion of her win that features on the front page of our papers today. Tanzania massacre is the front page of the Standard. Very disturbing pictures there. Gruesome scenes, people injured, people dead. And that's how the very first female elected president in East Africa gets into office. With us this morning, Kipruto Rapkirwa, who served as Agriculture Minister in the Kibaki I administration and also as a four-term MP of Cherangani constituency. Karibu sana.
It's my pleasure.
Yes, Kathy Rungu, governance analyst, also with us this morning. Good morning, Karibu.
Good morning, and thank you very much.
We are hoping that one more panelist will be joining us, but let's start from there. What do you make of all this that's happening in Tanzania?
Well, it is a mixture of many things. A mixture of betrayal of Mwalimu Nyerere's call for unity, call for humility, and the need for people to realize that each and every person is important. I say so because the way the leaders in Tanzania have been talking in the run-up to the general election was a sign of arrogance, what Nyerere called in Kiswahili ubabe. Ubabe is something that Nyerere did not like at all because he believed the position you are given as a leader is a position of service, not a position of arrogating yourselves responsibilities beyond you. The second issue is that, and let me emphasize a bit, because Stephen Wasira, who is the vice chairman of CCM, because the president is a chairman of CCM, has been making very derogatory statements because he's an old man, he's over 80. When we were small children in Tanzania, he was already a member of parliament of Bunda in one of the regions of Msoma. And some of those statements are the ones which have fomented a lot of outrage among young people and people who are from the opposition throughout Tanzania. So the win by CCM may not be a surprise, but people are outraged by the fact that leaders ought to inform themselves that while you get a position of leadership, it is an opportunity for you to demonstrate that the fact that you hold a high position does not make you different from the rest of the people of the country or the locality that you represent. On the other hand, there is the challenge of what I call the challenge of, or the cause of a running mate. Because the running mate, in many cases, is somebody we consider to be a partner for the purpose of winning the election. But mentally, that person is not fully prepared to take over the position that should any situation arise the way we lost the late John Pombe Magufuli. This therefore means Suluhu was a good running mate, but perhaps was not a good president because she has not prepared us very well.
98%, that means she enjoys massive support. What do you make of that kind of election?
I call it miscarriage of justice. Nyerere himself got 90-something% at the beginning of time in Tanzania in 1961. But that was an effort that he had campaigned throughout Tanzania. And 6 weeks later on, he resigned to take over the party mobilization throughout the Republic and allowed the late Rashidi Kawawa to be the leader of Tanzania for 1 year as he mobilized the party. But this is a product of miscarriage of justice, miscarriage of democracy, where Chadema decided to boycott the elections, and therefore they did not present some candidates in some of the areas. Number two, the amount of outrage, the amount of people who have been killed, and that's why they were shutting the internet. Observers from the ground tell us that death toll is higher than what it has been reported. And therefore this means this has been just a robbery. It has not been democracy at all by any standards. And this is the poverty of Africa. You can see Yusuf has already congratulated her, and many other leaders, I'm sure they are going to go to Tanzania to celebrate the so-called victory by the current regime. It is a situation that in Africa, if we are not careful, we are going just to be going around the circles, and we shall do nothing to improve the situation of our continent.
Yes. Kathy, of course, it was going to be a moment of celebration and a record because this is the very first elected female president in this region. Yet what we are seeing now, there's little to celebrate about. How does that make you feel?
It's quite unfortunate, and I remember we had mentioned some of these things last week. And because you know, a lot is expected whenever women take lead, and we have actually campaigned for ourselves on those platforms that, you know, elect a woman and life changes, and, you know, they will care about life, they will show direction, they will be better. But then looking at what has happened in Tanzania, I would say that it is quite unfortunate. It's an embarrassment, to say the least, and we did not expect this. But however, I think by last week, all of us knew that actually Suluhu was running against herself, because the other candidate had already indicated that they would not participate in that general election. Now the question that now begs as we move forward, how does she pick the pieces together to move the country forward? I mean, just looking at the repercussions of the people who went to the streets to agitate for free and fair election, yet the commission still went ahead and declared her a winner, then I think she's not going to rule, or rather, she's going to have a lot of bumpy areas from now moving forward in her leadership. It's not going to be rosy. And I think it's a matter of wait and see, because I expect that it's going to be pushed for the opposition candidate and herself to have something like a handshake. We have set that pace for Africa, where people, you know, contest against each other, and then when these kind of things happen, then they are pushed or they are asked to come together to form a government of national unity or something like that. I don't know how the opposition candidate will react to that. And the other thing that is likely to happen in Tanzania is that it's highly likely that we're going to see wheels of justice, you know, start moving. You know, some people might move to ICC to report her on all these cases against humanity. Yeah.
Yes. Interesting that 5 days later, following that election day, that the internet remains down. Mm-hmm. And this is how she begins her official term as president.
Quite unfortunate.
Yes.
Quite unfortunate, because I think up to now they're still not enjoying internet, and that means that there's still so much that is not being reported, because if internet was there, the kind of agitation and the voice that I saw, you know, from the young people, then maybe we would be knowing more than what we are getting from the mainstream media. Okay. Yeah. So it's just a way of you know, gagging them and ensuring that we're not getting the facts on the ground as they are.
Right. Wanakirwa, it's telling, of course, that even President William Ruto, the current chair of the ESC, is yet to send any congratulatory message to his counterpart in Tanzania. And yet we are seeing the AU chairperson very quick to congratulate Samia Suluhu Hassan, despite what is happening there. From a diplomatic perspective, do you think that there was a miss there by the AU chairperson?
Well, I think perhaps it may not be alive to the facts that obtained in Tanzania, and that may inform his rush to congratulate her. But also, in terms of international protocol, we say thou shalt not interfere with internal affairs of another country, because collectively we are guilty, because even the state formation in 1648 was actually a group of thugs who had been fighting for almost 30 years. And they decided now we are going to be together for self-preservation, and collectively, should anybody attack us, we shall defend ourselves. So it is like each and every country as a skeleton. Djibouti cannot be said to be any democracy. It is only that we call it democratic because people go to regular elections, but just the confirmation of the same individual is more of a kingdom than a democracy. As to why the president of Kenya has been quiet, perhaps because he's been out of town, but of course the president, his office is where he is.
He is a chairperson of the ESC.
ESC, and he should have also congratulated her, because I don't think William Ruto is any better compared to Suluhu. Although Suluhu has been derogatory in the way he looks at us, that Kenyans wako kwa giza, kisungu kingi na wana chakula. And all the time she's been referring to us as if we are just the racket of the world. But I'm not saying I thank God. I'm just saying at times a word of mouth can come to haunt you much earlier than you expected.
Allow me to welcome Wakili Kibe Mungai to this conversation. Wakili, good morning, karibu sana.
Good morning.
We're just trying to unpack what's happening in Tanzania.
Yes.
And very unfortunate scenes there, even the images on the front page of the Standard, very disturbing this morning. But this is not what we ever expected would happen in Tanzania. In fact, the word has always been that hizo ni shida za Wakenya, tabia mbaya ya Wakenya. And Tanzania has always offered in this region what we may call political sanity. The calm waters. But this time round, it would appear that the level of unrest there could actually surpass what you've seen in Kenya or elsewhere.
Yes, it is true that Tanzania looks from a distance as a disciplined society, as an organized society that is moving ahead without what appears to be the democratic chaos of Kenya. But it is important from that standpoint to say that there is a tendency when you go to North Korea. I do not think that for the ages you've ever had any demonstration of any kind. The citizens appear to be very disciplined, obeying everything that the government wants. It was the same case with China until the Tiananmen Square events happened back in the days. And therefore, Tanzania was no different. When you look at Tanzania, particularly if I can look at it from a constitutional point of view, this is a society in which you can say in East Africa, even compared to Uganda, it is the most backward in terms of constitutional evolution. Tanzania is largely a one-party state. Tanzania has been struggling to get a new constitutional order that would reflect the modern aspiration, even by African standards, on how a democracy should be run. Everybody in Kenya appears to be shocked, though I have mentioned it here previously, that in Tanzania, when the IEBC declares election, that is final. You cannot challenge it in court. You do not have this kind of thing probably anywhere else in Africa. Even in Uganda, as a dictator as Yoweri Museveni might be, they actually conduct, you can actually challenge presidential elections, and this election has been challenged a number of times. Therefore, you find yourself in a situation that on one hand, Tanzania appears to be Kenya in 1968. Remember when Jomo Kenyatta's regime declared that on very flimsy grounds, KPU of Jaramogi Oginga Odinga could not be able to vie for elections based on some technical rules that in the absence of the Chadema, the one who was supposed to vie election contest was actually disqualified by the IEBC. You had it in 1969 in Kenya. Then you see that when you do not have a new constitution that provides, underpins multi-party democracy, then this is Kenya in 1992. Therefore, and again now to make it worse with what Suluhu has done, you know this thing of winning 98% of the votes and getting all seats except 2. This is backward. This is what happens in North Korea. It is not true. It will effectively means that even in areas where you have zero support, the MPs for that area are coming from your party. You've never had anything like this in Kenya. Remember from 1992, even when President Moi could rig elections here and there, the areas that are supposed to be opposition, Nyanza, Central Province, during those days, they were returning 100% vote. Even in Uganda, you have an element of that, where people who are very opposed to Museveni, they actually win in their areas. So even when I hear my colleagues, I heard them say, are you going to have something like Governor of National Unity? No, you cannot have it in Tanzania. Why is that the case? Because this government of national unity, they are always based on a modicum of some elections that took place. If your name is Raila Odinga or Mwai Kibaki, you actually won in your areas. So that from a parliamentary point of view, what is shared is the executive. But now when you have gotten everything, parliament, local elections, and the executive, what would be the basis politically for you to say that you have a coalition? And finally, It is a scenario now that you see, because Tanzania is ripe for constitutional change. This election, two things arises. Unless this election is cancelled, then there can be no basis for where you can make any political deal, because you must cancel this election and hold some kind of an election that would reflect the ground. Two, which is directly connected to that, is that effectively you are telling Tanzanians that I have gotten my IEBC, which is a branch of the Office of the President in Tanzania, to declare me as president and to give me back parliament. So it's going to be colonialism. Kenyans and the Tanzanians have something to do with this. Africans are opposed to colonialism. So you cannot become a new colonialist from Zanzibar and expect to have peace. So that the long-term scenario, as I see it in Tanzania, is that before Tanzania can come up to the 21st century, because it is still in 1992, you are actually going to have serious disturbances in Tanzania.
And the discussion, of course, prior to this election, Kathy, was the fact that there was this general clamor for reforms, constitutional reforms, because in as far as multi-party democracy, their history is just like ours. Back from early 90s, 91, 92, they were a multi-party democracy, but the reality of that has been different between these two countries. But with a majority in parliament, actually totalitarian majority, 270 out of 272 seats, do you see any possibility of that conversation moving forward anytime soon?
To be honest, I don't think it will happen internally, you know, like from themselves. And I am not sure they have the capacity to organize, you know, to that effect. And I'm speaking, you know, politically speaking. However, as we know, Africa, there's too many interests. You know, when you think about geopolitics and how our internal affairs keep getting interfered with by other external forces, I think there's going to be a lot of interest moving forward, and they might just be forced to bring in reform and to see to it that certain things change. Remember, even us, we at times we look at Tanzania and all these other smaller countries, smaller in terms of, you know, the democratic space that they have created for the people, differently, but we also walked the same, you know, path. I mean, we didn't start from where we are. We have a better constitution than Tanzania, but then how are we, you know, 10, 20 years back? So I think for them, it's a matter of, they actually need to expand the democratic space. This is, it's not a novice idea, but then it's one step at a time. We were there at some point. We are doing much better than them, but then there's one thing that we need to remember, that the young people in Tanzania, the young people in Kenya, and all our neighbors seem to reason in the same way. So maybe it's actually the political, you know, the people who've been in the politics of Tanzania and Kenya and all these countries who are not moving as fast as the young people. Because the kind of agitation, I saw the protests that were on the road led by the Gen Zs in Tanzania, then it means that the young people across Africa are speaking in one voice. Yeah.
But where does that leave now, the East Africa community? Because our aspiration, we've always imagined that we have common aspirations. As Kathy puts it, yes, probably the younger generation may share a lot in that. Yeah. But the political class, even just by how accepting to democracy we are, we're totally different. Do you see this promise or hope of an East African community going forward, working, given the difference that we are seeing politically between Tanzania and Kenya?
Well, I believe in the school of being optimistic, in the sense that this is just one leader out of 6 leaders who have led Tanzania, who seems to be reluctant about integration of East Africa and improvement of intra-Africa trade, including some of the issues like onions that we've been getting from Tanzania. But largely, Tanzanians and the leaders that Tanzania has had have been pursuing clearly the vision of Mwalimu Nyerere, where Nyerere did not believe that the boundary between us and Tanzania should be an issue of a lot of discussion, because the Maasais of Kenya and Tanzania are the same family, they are the same people. Yoweri Museveni, despite many other faults he may have, also believes in integration of East Africa as a way of improving our own internal trade as a region before we think of trading with other blocs. But the main problem in Tanzania and the main problem with Suluhu is more personal to her. And the one of Tanzania is the fact that Zanzibar behaves like a single individual, not in any marriage, when it is convenient, because they do their budget, all the ports and other infrastructural facilities belong to Zanzibar at the exclusion of the rest of the mainland. But anything that belongs to the mainland, they partake in it. This therefore means that there is some kind of parasitic relationship between Zanzibar and Tanganyika. A fragile situation that was welded by the late Abeid Karume and Mwalimu Julius Nyerere. But the lady from Zanzibar, who happens now to be the president, does not realize how fragile that situation is. So the mainland is bitter about the fact that Zanzibar is enjoying some kind of exclusive club when it is convenient for them, and they decide to be independent of Tanganyika when it fits them. And not to mention the fact that the lady has been extremely arrogant and having some kind of attitude that is un-African. Remember, we are children of the world. We come from diverse backgrounds. She cannot deny the fact that she has Arab blood, and therefore that she ought to be more sensitive than any individual in handling the issues of Tanganyika. Because Tanganyika has been carrying the burden of Zanzibar. Remember, Zanzibar has only 700,000 voters. The rest of Tanganyika has millions of voters in the excess of 30. And yet, members of parliament from Zanzibar are 50, and from the mainland are 200 and something. If you are to look at pro rata representation, Zanzibar is overrepresented. And these are sentiments that people have. The other day, the issue of the port. You remember Adani, when he was chased from Kenya, he went to Tanzania. And the lady, without winking, she gave a lot of opportunities to Adani, almost to take over all the ports in Tanganyika. While Zanzibar, they are protecting their ports. So this is something that is beyond just the issue of East Africa. The lady herself refused us to buy maize from Zanzibar, not Zambia, to transport to Kenya. She blocked, bought it, and hoarded, just to create a situation in Kenya that can easily become untenable. She does not understand basic intra-Africa trade. She does not understand basic diplomacy. She does not understand basic African need to have some kind of a regime for international money market within the continent of Africa. She likes all that. And yet she's the president. And of course, presidents, they arrogate themselves the responsibility of saying they are the most educated, even when we know they have not gone to school so well insofar as leadership is concerned. This is the challenge we have about Tanzania.
Yes, that level of repression we're seeing in Tanzania is unprecedented. We've not seen that probably in the last 30 years in Kenya. With this imbalance in as far as progress in constitutionalism between the two countries, or even the 3, 4, 5 East African countries, do you feel like Kenya is carrying a bigger burden to try and push for this East African dream?
I think there is a sense in that, and there is almost a relationship by what Mheshimiwa Kipruto Kirwa has explained, the imbalance between Zanzibar and Tanganyika. You see also a bit of that in the relationship between Kenya and these other countries. Because a lot of times, Kenya at its own expense has had to give concessions so that the East African community can move forward. Because, and sometimes we blame our leaders, like, can't we be more decisive and stand up for the interests of Kenya? Because you can imagine how a good neighbor can stop you from getting maize from Zambia to bring it to your country. There is absolutely no sense in that. Or even when you have an excess maize in Tanzania, you also do not allow us to buy. And you can remember there is always this big fight where the Tanzanians are expecting that Kenyan drivers cannot take tourists to the Tanzanian side. And yet Kenya does not ordinarily give any conditions to similar conditions against Tanzanian drivers. And of course, I've heard something from hikers. I hike a few times every year, complaining about the situation from Kilimanjaro, where you cannot climb Kilimanjaro here from the Kenyan side. Yet this is a shared heritage. So the direct answer to that question is that indeed Kenya has had to carry an extra burden. But there's also something else that we talk about, an element of either envy or jealousy on the part of the leadership. Because for the most part, Yoweri Museveni has always been uncomfortable, even the Tanzanian leadership, with the fact that Kenya appears to be a little bit more progressive in a manner that makes them uncomfortable. You remember there has always been all this cry where they are saying, don't bring the bad manners of Kenya to the region. Bob Njage and his colleagues were abducted in Uganda. You've had situations whereby Boniface Mwangi and his colleagues were also abducted and tortured in Tanzania. Because all this leadership in this area, they view the freedom mindset of Kenyans as a big threat to their countries. And this is why in Kenya, and it is important to tie this to what is happening in Kenya. In Kenya, this is why you see that except at the business level, where you would have expected, because politically, the mindset of our President William Ruto and Suluhu and Yoweri Museveni is not very different. Because whereas those ones are clearly very backward in terms of constitutional and political development from the viewpoint of a liberal democracy, you see also Kenya in a situation whereby we are trying to retrogress, to go back to the imperial presidency where we came from. We are trying to buy the opposition. So that the only fortunate thing is that whereas you have two in Tanzania, you get a situation whereby the president, despite starting with a minority, he is nowadays having a majority. Only that if ODM were to play ball, they can change the constitutions if they wanted to do that. Therefore, you find there is democratic backsliding. There is, in Tanzania, Magufuli, and this is the danger of having a retrograde as president. Samia is only happening, let us not forget, because she was supposed to be a weakling from Zanzibar. The President Magufuli was afraid of having somebody who is strong, high up in the politics. He himself is a beneficiary, that he was some kind of a compromise candidate, so that the true candidates in Tanzania could be prevented from being president. So that this thing of politics, of manipulations, politics of the boardroom are always bad for the country. So that looking into the future, you are actually afraid of if democracy is aborted. And there are serious efforts to abort democracy if people manipulate democracy, so that, for example, you can sponsor impeachment motions in the hope that you will prevent strong candidates from vying against you. It is the same thing that in Tanzania they are doing by abducting people, killing opposition leaders, charging them with treason. So that they're looking forward. That is why we have a golden opportunity. Suluhu should not get into taking Africa, any country of Africa, into the 1980s. Finally, on this African Commission, it is no wonder African Union may die sooner or later. Why? It does not represent the aspirations of many Africans. You can see in West Africa, they're trying to exclude countries from the AU, countries where they got rid of dictators. And then you punish them that they have military leaders. What is the difference between Suluhu or Yoweri Museveni and any of the military leaders? There actually was. So that instead of going for quality and say we don't want this kind of bad manners, the one you have in Suluhu and the one that you have with Yoweri Museveni, they actually say those are good leaders, but they kill people. Burkina Faso are no longer killing people, and Mali. Yet on what basis now can you say that Yoweri Museveni is better than this guy from Burkina Faso?
Right.
It's hypocrisy.
And of course, whatever is happening in Tanzania, dominating Kenyan headlines this morning. Tanzania massacre is a big one on the front page of the Standard, and very gruesome images there, which is also very new even to Kenyan media. images of people who've been injured, or some of them are dead, and featuring there on the front page of the Standard. The Star also has something similar, and we've been discussing this. The Tanzanian arrest cuts food supplies to Kenya and disrupts trade. And so you're talking about the East African community and how anything happening in our neighboring countries also affects us. It's also mentioned there on the front page of the Daily Nation, and they question how the silence by President William Ruto, who is the current chairperson of the East African community, is yet to congratulate his counterpart in Tanzania. What does that mean? Does he agree with that? I want us now to come back home and take a look at the political shifts or dynamics that continue to play out. And of course, we're now counting down towards the November 27th election, by-elections across the country. A lot of things happening. And to set the stage for that discussion, let's have a story about Mount Kenya politics, where the former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua slammed the president over Mount Kenya betrayal.
Former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has broken his silence following the death of former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, accusing President William Ruto of betraying the Mount Kenya region, despite their overwhelming support for his presidency in 2022.
Sisi wewe Githinji tulikuchagua, tulikupenda, tukakupatia kura zetu zote, ukakuwa mfalme, ukafika pahali ukatusaliti, ukatudanganya, ukageuka sisi, ukahangaisha biashara zetu, ukafuta watoto wetu kazi, ukaharibu kila kitu, ukaharibu masomo, ukaharibu matibabu. Sisi tukawachana na wewe. Sasa umefika pahali unatuma ile mtu yako ya standard 3 anatukana sisi, anatukana jamii yetu akisema sisi ni roho chafu. Alikuwa pale akasema Uhuru Kenyatta ni roho chafu, akasema Rigathi Gachagua ni roho chafu, akasema Martha Karua ni roho chafu, akasema Justin Muturi ni roho chafu, akasema Linturi ni roho chafu. Ni matusi si matusi? Ni madharau si madharau?
Gachagua's allies, who flanked the former DP during the burial of 6 family members who died in a road accident at River Kithe in Gatanga constituency, declared that the region remains solidly behind him as its de facto leader, a development that raises the stakes in the search for the United Opposition Alliance flag bearer.
Yeyote anayetaka kura za urais huku kwetu, mlango ni mmoja na ni Rigathi Gachagua, kwa sababu tumetambua William Ruto alijileta huku na ndiyo maana alitudharau alipofika pale. Na kwa hivyo yeyote anayetaka kura zetu apitie kwa kiongozi wetu Rigathi Gachagua.
Gachagua's statement comes at a crucial turning point, with analysts saying the death of Odinga has left his Nyanza support base wide open, creating a new battlefront between the opposition and the Ruto administration. Apul Kamau, TV47.
Yes, and that statement by Apollo Kamau towards the end of his report is indeed what plays out on the front pages. Now, ODM, in an exclusive interview with the Daily Nation, the interim party leader says it's DP or nothing. More demands on the president. This just goes to signal the kind of shifting political dynamics of the past 2 weeks. It's only been 2 weeks since the passing on of the former Prime Minister, Raila Odinga. So much has happened. Probably now a lot of focus will move to the by-elections in 23 or 24 days' time. But definitely something has shifted. And we can see that even what we call the United Opposition have now come out officially to now voice their direction following the death of Raila Odinga. Do you feel that now it's time that everything will take shape politically, especially with the by-elections coming up?
Well, the by-elections may be, to a limited extent, a precursor of the picture that is likely to be depicted, except the fact that I know the administration will use a lot of energy, a lot of arm twisting, a lot of money to make sure that they create certain results that may not be a reflection of the reality on the ground. Why do I say so? There are only a few by-elections, and unlike a general election where each and every other constituency as a candidate vying for a position. So the results may, to a certain extent, give us an indication of how things will go. The second issue is the fact that ODM itself is still readjusting to the realities of the fact that Raila is no more. It would have been easier for Raila to almost take ODM towards a certain direction, whether it's the direction of those in the current regime or another direction. But as I see it today, there are likely to be about three forces. But I'm happy Oburu Odinga seems to be extending an olive branch to the younger leaders within the ODM family. That can actually assist ODM to still remain together. And if I was to advise ODM, is not to go for a position of DP. You will be subordinating yourself because you need to galvanize the imagination of Kenyans that in the absence of Raila, the Raila vision, the Raila spirit still carries on. Present a presidential candidate, make sure even if he doesn't win, he can be part of the next coalition. Because if ODM presents its presidential candidate, it is highly likely that nobody will win in round one. And in round two, they can now negotiate for the position that they want, depending on the numbers they have garnered, and also depending on other partners across the landscape. But being subordinate to anybody, whether it is to the opposition or to the current regime, is actually subordinating their interests and their possibility of them getting to the presidency.
If we may focus on what the former deputy president has talked about, because immediately after the death of Raila Odinga, the political rhetoric went quiet.
Yes.
Of course, they needed to go back, sit down and redraw their plans. Now, listening to the kind of talk or the statements he made yesterday, should we expect more of that, that he has decided, okay, fine, this is the way to go. This is a line we will hold going forward. These are the battles we'll fight, and on this line?
Well, I think a lot is going on behind the scenes. Perhaps to the public domain, there are certain things that we share and certain things that we don't share. Otherwise, even some of the so-called simmering disquiet in the opposition may not be entirely true. There is a lot of consultations, and as people consult, we do not have unanimity of mind. We have diversity of thought, and that diversity should be harvested in a way that it creates some kind of a consistent focus on the prize. And our main prize is not even winning power, but reconstructing the institutions that do exist within this environment called Kenya. Trying to restore the confidence of the people, trying to restore the institutional arrangement that we used to have, trying to restore the fact that it is not the president that is the most important person. The president is just a leader of a team of individuals who can perform for the betterment of Kenya.
Yeah. It was definitely back to the drawing board for anyone in the political scene. Did you expect that Rigathi Gachagua, after that period of silence, would come back with the same sentiments that we are now getting from him, or did you expect a different kind of messaging, given the kind of events that have changed everything over the past 2 weeks?
No, for me, this is exactly what I expected from Rigathi Gachagua. He's a master of emotional manipulation. The only part that has really disappointed me is where he's trying to be the gatekeeper or the prefect for the rest of the people in the, you know, like trying to say that if you want the kuras or the votes from Mount Kenya region, then you have to come through him. Why? Having said that, I think what we are seeing is just like you're suggesting, that it's like going back to the drawing board for everyone. If you listened to the president during Raila's funeral, both in Bondo and at Nyayo, he came out very strongly as someone who wanted to meddle or interfere with internal matters of the ODM party. And when I listen to Oburu Odinga, I see a party that is now telling him, please don't meddle in our business. keep off and we are able to chart our way forward with or without Raila Odinga. To me, Raila Odinga was going to bolt out of the broad-based government. And I'm sure key people within the ODM knows that it was just a matter of time and he was going to bolt out. He had come out strongly and he told us that ODM was going to have a presidential candidate. We need, in the united opposition, one needs to happen because for me, right now, ODM has started speaking the language of the united opposition. What needs to happen is to actually open our doors and make sure that those people, irrespective of their past relationships with either William Ruto or the government, even the people, some of the people who are in government who would want to join the united opposition must be welcomed. So we cannot continue focusing on the past relationship or even future alignments and just, you know, push people out of the places where they want to be part of. And I'm talking about the united opposition. We must be open, we must encourage as many people as possible to join us if our mission is actually to unseat the Ruto government.
Okay. Raila was definitely going to be the biggest factor in 2027. Now with his exit, messaging going forward from now really does matter. What you're seeing Oburu Odinga talking about and demanding the DP's position. On the other hand, listening to what Rigathi Gachagua is talking about. That appears to be a result of thought. It's not just sentiments that come from nowhere. These are people who have sat down and decided, okay, fine, things have changed, this is how we are proceeding going forward.
Yes, and I don't think what is happening across the country is any different from what is happening in the Mount Kenya region. For the simple reason that about 2 weeks ago, I believe, you had a situation whereby President Ruto and Gideon Moi said they are coming together to consolidate the votes in their region in order that they may be able to speak with one voice come 2027. The same case is happening with Matiang'i. The same thing is happening with the ODM. Now when you hear Oburu trying to say, let us put our house in order. So that I think sometimes we react actually emotionally when you only isolate one person and say, you've got no right to consolidate your area. The truth of the matter is that the Jubilee Party, which I was a member, and I'm still very much associated with Jubilee Party, was the representative. We went to Azimio. I keep saying I was in Azimio. I'm still in Azimio because it is still there. And we went to Azimio through Jubilee. But Jubilee was able to be messed up by William Ruto, so that every other leader of Jubilee is today in UDA. So that the sentiment on the ground, people may hate to hear this, is that Jubilee by and large, unless Matiang'i is able to revive it, represents the past in the Mount Kenya region. The party for the future, for the time being, appears to be DCP, unless they are able, because you must express the aspiration and the fears of the region for you to say that we represent this particular region. But since Kenya is a multi-party democracy, I think the challenge, and personally I favor that, I don't want DCP to create a new brand of people whose only election would be on the basis that they are loyal to Rigathi Gachagua. I would want a situation whereby in parliament you have quality. Today, the problem in the Mount Kenya or Central Kenya region, because it is bigger than Mount Kenya, is that you have low caliber leaders. And it is the reason why President Ruto has been able to manipulate the politics in that particular area. So that moving forward, if you are a party that during the day you are in the opposition and at night you eat a dinner at State House, there is definitely going to be a problem with ordinary people. And therefore, the chance, of course, now going to the Jaramogi issue, to ODM, the challenge is that it gives new opportunities. And that is why I think it is a game changer on the ground. And it will have to delay certain decisions from being made. Because looking forward, the issue is going to be this. What are going to be the long-term repercussions of the death of Raila? Are you going to have a situation whereby ODM is either gets closer through a formal coalitions with UDA, or it is actually sacked, it dissolves itself and join UDA. As a few of those people are saying that when you're an orphan, you don't give demands. You just move with your mother to the stepfather's home. I think the Sifuna group, which is where Oburu seems to be going, some people may have a problem walking away with their mother to the stepfather's home. A bit of Jubilee also is in that identity crisis. They don't know whether they should also be go with their mother to the stepfather's home, which is UDA. And therefore, these are long-term dynamics. And I like the idea that my brother Kipruto Arap has said. All indications are that the 2027 presidential elections in Kenya will be settled through a runoff. If that reality presents itself, or it becomes obvious, it is obvious to me in 2025, and I've had this discussion with Kipruto Arap, it will become more obvious in 2026. When that scenario becomes obvious to everybody, different decisions are going to be made. And the biggest opportunity in all this, and I hope ODM will get to understand that, in a runoff elections, President Ruto does not have to be in the runoff. You only need to understand what is the mathematics and implement it.
And it's good and interesting that you've mentioned it's about mathematics and regional, based on the regions. But this was not initially the plan. The plan was that we have a more nationalistic approach. But very quickly, even we've quickly gone back to regional discussions, and everyone balkanizing their region and saying this is our bargaining chip going forward. But what happens to other regions that initially probably are not as homogeneous? Western Kenya, for example, Coast region is another one. What happens to those regions?
Well, I think Western Kenya, to begin with, is likely to be unanimous in the next election. Unanimous in the sense that they are not going to give votes to the current regime. Despite all this drama that is being displayed, you can see that is a managed crowd of either people who have certain interest, and those interests are likely to be instantly addressed to create that kind of feeling that the president is still got presence in Western. I'm not a lawyer, but I come from the Western region, and I've lived among the lawyers for as long as I've been alive. I've gone to school with them. I understand their language. I understand their sociology, and their body language is very clear. They are not with William Ruto. As to where Coast will go, it will depend. If ODM will work with UDA, then Coast is likely to gravitate towards that direction. But if they are going to be split, Coast is likely to be more ODM than UDA. The other constituency that is very critical, but we are still ignoring, is the young population. The young population is likely to vote against the current regime more than vote for the current regime, regardless of where they come from. There is this mistaken notion that Rift Valley or the Kalenjin Rift Valley is exclusively for William Ruto. I can say so with a lot of knowledge, a lot of authority, and without imagining that I can be contradicted, unless they are going to be forced to vote for William Ruto. The young generation have an independent mind. In every family of 5 children, likely 3 of them will vote against Ruto, 2 may vote for him.
Between the two groupings, which one do you think will be more consequential? The vote of the younger generation, which is across board, does not care about regions and tribe, but there's this level of political class that feels we have to calculate or do the arithmetic depending on our regions.
In fact, the best thing, the thing that is going to be consequential is that if we are going to be issue-oriented, and let's go back to 2024, if we take that script that we were given by young generation, and we are able to distill the issues they told us, and to communicate those issues to them and to the rest of the country, that is the team that will win. If Ruto is going to pick those issues and address them and make them believe him again, because the main problem with Ruto is not even who is going to run against him. The main problem with him is that he has run low on trust, he has run high on corruption, he has run high on issues of lies, and therefore, if anybody is going to be presented, even among the 3 of us here, is going to be agreed by a majority of the leaders in the opposition, that is going to be a formidable candidate because they are not voting for Ruto, they are voting against him, and whoever is on the other side and is likely to create some sense of believability because he has not lied as many times as the current president, that's the person to win.
I've seen a story in the inside pages that Rigathi Gachagua and Kalonzo Musyoka, between the two of them, they're saying they have 12 million votes. And that is the perception, that's the prism through which most of these political leaders look at this. And therefore it would suffice to say that whoever is a best chess master, whoever is able to galvanize 2, 3, 4 strong regions, even William Ruto himself, then it definitely means that he's going to win. Do you buy that kind of thinking, Kathy?
Okay, first of all, I mean, if you're looking at numbers, it is true that Mount Kenya region and the Lower Eastern have the numbers, and therefore that is a fact. But then the ethnic balkanization that happened in the past will not have place in the coming general election. It is actually very unfortunate that some of us who dare to speak truthfully and plainly about these issues, at times you're looked at from different lenses, especially by the people who have, who have been in the business of doing things the way Rigathi Gachagua and Kalonzo Musyoka are trying to suggest. Now, let it be understood, number one, that the Jubilee Party is in the united opposition to stay. By the way, even our presidential candidate is one of those people that can be are actually respected for their performance and for what they stand for. I've never had our presidential candidate, the deputy party leader, go out there and talk about his region or the number of votes that he's coming with. So if we are looking at change and what we are pushing for as the united opposition, is change from the past and from even the past mistakes that we made as a nation, then the right person to take us forward is not Rigathi Gachagua, is not Kalonzo Musyoka, is Fred Matiang'i. And I'm saying this with a lot of respect to the two gentlemen because I know each one of them personally. But they are taking us to the past. They are taking us back to where we came from. By the way, there's no difference between the Jubilee Party, Fred Matiang'i, and these two gentlemen. No. Actually, the enemy is people who are trying to take us to Moism. And I heard Wakili mention that even Kenya, we are trying to take the country back to where we came from. An imperial presidency, almost a one-party state where the people do not have a voice. The difference between the language that I've listened, I've listened to the current president speak, and I've listened to these other two gentlemen speak. The language, they speak the same language. It's Moism, it's taking us back to where we came from. And that is what we are refusing as women, as the young people. And I think the young people came out strongly and preached something different. They told us that they want things to be done differently. Why are you taking us back there to, ethnic balkanization? To things that do not even hold water. I listened to one of the two gentlemen that we have mentioned say that Mount Kenya region voted for very weak or very, not so sensible leaders.
Together.
But we also want to remind him that he's the one who campaigned for them. We have evidence. The person who actually campaigned for some of the people who make no sense at all in parliament is Rigathi Gachagua. He campaigned for Kawanjiku. We have evidence. He campaigned even for another woman he called Wamakeki. He gave us all these leaders, and all of a sudden, he's coming back to us and telling us that we want to change. Change from what to what? Even the people following him today, and this is a fact, including the candidate for Mbere, who is a musician, does it mean that we didn't have other qualified people, within that region who could take the mantle? So, speaking from both sides of their mouth, today you say this, and you think people have forgotten. You change the tune and say something else. This day, I listened to one of the leaders again, and he said, you know what, Kenyans, do not take us very seriously. The things we say during campaigns, you see, you should not take them seriously because it was just campaign. We must hold people accountable for what they say before, after, and during campaigns.
And we'll be back to examine that thing about the quality of leadership in a short while. But I'd want Wakili to comment on this issue of regional balkanization as the best way to galvanize a vote for the winning team.
Yes.
Because that, totally disregards the level of thinking of the Kenyan electorate, that we may come from the same region, but I do not agree probably with your campaign or your manifesto or something like that. Simply believing that because we come from this region, we have to vote a certain way. Do you think that that is part of the problem, and as Kathy says, going back on the gains we've made?
Of course, there is also what Kenyan elections are what we call constituency-based elections, unlike in South Africa. Constituency-based elections is a scenario whereby you do not expect DCP, you do not expect Jubilee to get even a single, in the normal scheme of things, to get a single seat in Luo Nyanza in the coming general elections. They have not gotten it in the last 4 elections. It's a reality that you can wish to run away from, but it is what it is, okay? Therefore, the presidential election going in the last 3-4 election cycles have been won on the basis of an electoral math that, for example, for William Ruto to be president, he needed a lot of support from Mount Kenya and a lot of support from his own region. Those 2 areas constituted a huge percentage. I believe more than 90% of the votes that he got. It was a regional victory. It was the same case when it was Uhuru Kenyatta. And I believe if Raila Odinga had won, it was still on the basis of what were obviously regional blocks. So that is the reality of the electoral math. We cannot run away from it. The only additional issue that we need to examine closely, and I hope it will involve, it is the creation of new political tribe, in quotes, the Gen Z tribe. If this tribe evolves, it could easily even be a bigger political tribe based on the numbers alone, or potential numbers, because it is one that can easily get to between 8 to 15 million. If that becomes a reality, that becomes a decisive vote, and actually a winning vote, if everything goes well. But as of now, because we've not seen real evidence that it will be felt in a consequential manner in the next general election, it is a reason why Rigathi Gachagua and William Ruto and others are still asserting and saying our traditional vote block consists of this number of people. But that does not have to be the actual reality when we shall actually be voting in 2027. So therefore, for me, and that is why I keep on saying, if you actually were to ask me, my personal view as Kibe Mongai, I would actually want Matiang'i to run for the president without bothering about opposition unity. Why do I say that? Because he is the candidate with the greatest opportunities as things stand right now to galvanize what I call is the potentially largest political tribe in Kenya, the tribe of the younger generation, which is largely tribeless and value-based. Because that one is one of the things that is going to rescue us from the tribalism that we have known. It is also going to ensure, because in the next election, even if we we are unable to remove William Ruto, for me, I'll be satisfied if William Ruto does not get more than 80 MPs or 100 at most. Because the scenario that you are having right now is that parliament is dead. And I believe Kenya is worse off because of the fact that parliament is dead, because even the capacity for Ruto to be an open dictator has also actually depended more on the fact that parliament is dead. So we have a lot of opportunities. The death of Raila Odinga is also another great opportunity, because for the first time in the region that he controls, you may have competitive elections. Voices that have been suppressed in the Tanzanian way for a long period may be vented, may be expressed. Therefore, we are looking at great opportunities. In the first instance, it appeared like, oh, the death of Raila means ODM is going to dissolve and become part of UDA. But I think they seem to be relatively proud people who cannot just be able to wind up their house and go to the step further. That would be a great thing.
All right. Let's now, as we come to the end of this discussion, let's now examine those statements about the quality of leaders that we have elected in Kenya over the past few years. And that statement was a very curious one, that ODM appears to have, over time, managed to surround Raila Odinga with brilliant lawyers that he could say to Parliament, and in that way raise the level of debate there. And on the other hand, the level of lawyers, the level of legislators from a different part of this country were not at that level. Do you agree that that is the way we look at it, that leadership can only come through academic qualification and that level of elitism?
Well, let's go back to the history of this country. Even during one-party system, I was in Parliament with serious luminaries like the late Peter Castro Luarengo, a very adept debater, and when he took the floor, even if you did not agree with him, you cared to listen to him because you knew there is something to pick out of that kind of a menu. We had people like the late Mwai Kibaki. When he dealt on issues of economy, he made economics look so simple that even those of us who are not trained economists, we were able to follow discussion. And after he talked, you did not find a lot of time to listen to other speakers talking on the same issue of economy. This therefore means that the people of this country, even in one-party state, they were still able to pick the best among the rest. The major problem that has come is the balkanization that we've done for the last 5 general elections, perhaps because we have tribalized our politics more than any other time in the history of this country. Our second liberation brought in, the first time in 1992, brought in very strong individuals who we felt, despite the fact that we were in the ruling party, we felt they had a lot to contribute to this country. But in the subsequent elections, it has been some kind of bandwagoning the communities in a way that if you are not in the party that is prevalent within your community, you are seen as a traitor, and therefore you stand no chance of winning in a place where the party that you have chosen is not the party of the community of choice. That has created a big problem, and therefore some of the individuals who have come in out of the fact that those who supported them just wanted the numbers. They never wanted the brains. And the danger with Kenya and with humanity, and that's why I was telling you the case of the deputy or the vice or the deputy governor, is that you pick somebody you don't feel threatened by him. And when you disappear, you leave the people who elected you because they believed in you with somebody who is wishy-washy. Now, this is the danger. So the issue is that there is a lot of progress because most of these young people, they have gone at least to school to a certain level. But leadership is not synonymous with academic excellence. Some of the best leaders never, I've said before, like Winston Churchill, he dropped out of Form 2, and he was one of the best leaders. Perhaps the fact that people have demonized President Moi per capita or per period, if Moi stayed for 10 years, he would actually be one of the best presidents Kenya would have had. But you overstayed this invitation. I cannot compare Moi with Ruto. Moi will be so many miles ahead of him in terms of national integration, despite the fact that he was repressive in certain conditions, and the Constitution allowed him. Even detention without trial was enshrined in the Constitution, and it's not him who brought that issue to the Constitution. So, but the problem is that we have people who arrogate themselves because they have certain qualifications in fields other than leadership. They pretend they are most educated people, and in the process, they don't care who comes in as a member of parliament. They just want wishy-washy individuals who are part of the wash-wash. That's why Fred Matiang'i said when he was Minister for Interior that 20% of parliament that was to come, which is this parliament, was wash-wash. People who get money from nowhere, all of a sudden they are awash with money, and they create a feeling of plenty in the midst of scarcity. These are some of the issues that I feel the mistake is ours, the people of Kenya. And that's why we need to do what we call social reengineering. so that you elect somebody because you have listened to the person, he has told you what his Sarah is, and he has convinced you that this is the best person to represent you. Otherwise, we are taking businessmen to parliament. And with CDF and other monies which hang around members of parliament, people can stay for 5 years without uttering a sentence, and they are re-elected. Why don't you ask yourselves, what quality are we presenting to the people of this country?
But there are those who argue that this is actually by design. It wasn't accidental. It was not by default. That yes, especially around the 2017 elections, that some political bigwigs decided, especially for Mount Kenya region, that they were going to get rid of a certain class of politicians who were elected by then, and the subsequent, and I think this was the 11th or 12th parliament, a different crop of new leaders who are now being criticized of not being up to speed or up to par, came up. Do you agree that that is exactly what happened?
Totally, totally. And I will first give my own very little experience. I was in the election of the TNA party, 2012-2013 under TNA. And that time, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta was totally in charge. And somehow, there was a similar, the feeling was almost similar to what we're experiencing now. There was a wave of change. You know, people were, you know, wanted change, wanted things to be done differently. Perhaps they also felt like the younger people, the two younger leaders, because they came out as the digital, you know, couple, the digital candidature, that is. And people believed that they represented something different. That was different. Between 2013 to 2017, I think the former president must have gotten busy or over-trusted William Ruto with certain affairs of the party, and that time it was the Jubilee Party. I was a candidate in Mathera constituency in the 2017 general election. I personally saw William Ruto in Mathera one day before the party primaries. And majority of the people who got into elective office that time, especially the members of parliament from my region, that whole process was engineered by William Ruto. In fact, that is why I get very surprised when I see some people say that they made Ruto president. No, Ruto first made them members of parliament so that he can make them whatever else later, including making Gachagua the deputy president, and that is a fact. So it is unfortunate that where I come from, we actually ended up with not so very good leaders, while where William Ruto comes from, the Rift Valley region, he was even able to nurture and grow young, upcoming, educated, as Rigathi Gachagua called it yesterday. While in Mount Kenya region, he just gave us, you know, just people he was able to toy with, manipulate, and sing his song. And that is how that is how all that contributed to his winning in the year 2022, and that is a fact.
Do you agree with that assessment?
Yes, I largely agree with it, and also I'll give it a historical perspective. I start first of all by pointing out that in Mbere, the candidate for Mbere is DCP had to withdraw its candidate. The candidate is the one of DP. So that even if however much you hate Gachagua, if the DP's candidate is a musician, just leave it as a DP affair, because it is not DCP, just for purposes of being honest. Number two is, I agree that, and I was at the forum where Gachagua, it was a forum, actually a lawyers forum, known as, there is an organization we have with more than 3,000-4,000 lawyers called Gema Watho. It was during that Gema Watho event, I also said something during the event, where both Kalonzo and Gachagua spoke. And the larger point, because that may not necessarily be captured by what the journalists chose to report, he was lamenting the fact that President Uhuru Kenyatta, during his time, he failed to nurture a crop of new leaders. And on account of that failure to nurture a crop of new leaders, it is what contributed to the current low caliber leadership that are generally called togeges. Togeges is the people who are clueless, people who cannot read their Adani report and know what to do, people who have confessed themselves that when William Ruto told them the budget is okay, they voted for the budget. And they confess they have not read. They have no capacity to read it. We call them Wamadis, Wamatangi, Wamakeki, all these kind of, in a situation. I think Hillary Clinton called them the dregs of society. You can't get leadership from the dregs of society. William Ruto was somehow able to get leaders, a crop of representations from the dregs of Kikuyu society. However, that is painful. It is the truth. People who, I have seen them laughing like sheep. You go, you see Farouk Kibet is abusing your community, then you are just laughing like sheep, even amongst the lawyers. You can't abuse the lawyer individuals or community and people laugh as sheep. You have a crop of sheep. It's the truth. And there is no hiding that. And that must be replaced. So by Rigathi Gachagua making that point, it is absolutely valid and we endorse it. He was actually repeating what I've always said about ODM. Raila may steal elections or may impose people. He wasn't stealing, okay? But who was he getting? High caliber people. Nowadays, when you go to parliament, you can hear that the people who are dominating, a long time ago, Kipruto Arap knows that, you could get a fair account of people from central Kenya being able to engage their mind. But today, when serious debates are happening, you see them looking like this, like they don't know what is happening. So this is a lamentable issue. You cannot allow these kind of things to persist. So when he committed and said, I will do my part to get rid of Mount Kenya regions from these kind of people, that he was speaking the language of a lot of us, the elite, and a lot of ordinary people, where we say, if your work is to sell meat, if your work is to sell tanks, that is what you are going to do. You are going to be the local trader in your area, and the most that you can be is probably to be the MCA for the area, where you can be able to speak about ordinary things. Because the truth of the matter, under the Constitution of Kenya, you are supposed to have some capacity to understand an intelligent debate of the 21st century. If you do not have that, there is no way that you can go. Let me make the final point about that issue of leadership, because it is an absolutely important issue. The last point that we need to make is that during this time of President Uhuru Kenyatta, you had a situation, there was an element of, I don't want to say that because I respect President Uhuru Kenyatta a lot, but there was a lot of political laziness, whereby it could have been possible, in my view, for President Uhuru Kenyatta to be able to say that in somewhere in Kandara, in Murang'a, I am supporting so and so, and to go and campaign for that person, and that person would have gotten elected, okay? But if you choose to do nothing about that scenario, then William Ruto, who is very opportunistic, will come and impose everybody from the dregs of Kikuyu society, and you get them to be their representatives in parliament. They say, when you want to kill any community, you actually go and get the worst of them into leadership position. This is what happened in Mount Kenya, and there is a very serious determination to ensure that new leadership will not come from the dregs.
Okay. 30 seconds for your parting shot. I'll take that as your parting shot, Wakili. It's 30 seconds.
30 seconds. I just want to, there is a story here of landslide in Keyo Marakwet. I want to condole with the families and wish those who are in hospitals quick recovery, because it is something devastating. But finally, allow me also to congratulate our athletes. Once again, they have done us proud. And we want to tell those in charge of sports that please let us harvest from every place. Realize that 3 girls come from 3 different communities, which means in every community there is a talent that we are yet to harvest.
Thank you so much, Kathy.
So I think number one is actually to congratulate, or I know my party leader, Uhuru Kenyatta, came out last week and made a confession or spoke about his health condition. And that's a very, very, very bold move. For us who knew that he's been ailing for some time and that his health was not okay, we chose to protect him. We chose not to speak, but pray for him. But now that he has come out and actually made all of us know that he's battling something, I think we continue to pray for the former head of state. Yeah. We continue to wish him a quick recovery. And he's the only father of this nation that we have, the symbol of unity and the only person that can put us together as a community, whip us and show us direction.
Thank you so much.
Let me just say that I wish well to the former President Uhuru Kenyatta. He's a good man. He was a statesman. He warned us that you will get yourself into this mess. And sure enough, we are in a big mess.
Thank you, Wakili Kibe Mungai, Advocate of the High Court, Kathy Rungu, Governance Analyst, and Ruto Arapkirwa, who served as Agriculture Minister in the Kibaki One administration, and is a four-time MP of Cherangani constituency. Karibuni sana. And thank you for your time at TV47. Once again, a quick look at the dailies this morning. A lot of ODM. Oburu says it's DP or nothing. That's a Daily Nation, and that changes the game for a lot of people. I think it is also there on a different paper, that's a People Daily, which talks about ODM and Raila Odinga's succession. But matters to do with what's happening in Tanzania also big on the Kenyan dailies, and that is Tanzanian massacre, a very disturbing front page of the Standard this morning. What that means to Kenya and how it translates to our daily lives, featuring on the front page of the Star. They talk about how the unrest in Tanzania has cut food supplies to Kenya and has disrupted trade. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time on State of the Nation. My name is Fred Ndimuli. Good morning.